Now, I know what you're thinking, but this is not a Witcher knockoff. It does look like our next festival update in Assassin's Creed Valhalla will be called the Wild Hunt, also known as the Oskoreia Festival or Ride of the Asgardians, found in Norse culture. But for a little bit of a background, Odin, leader of the hunt, was known to ride across the skies on his 8-legged horse Sleipnir, alongside fellow Asgardians and his hellhounds. When they were doing this, they'd bring the sound of strong winds, storms, and lightning with the purpose of actually taking the souls of the dead, humans, and livestock with them as they passed. So what people would do is they'd actually leave sacrifices and gifts to the gods outside their doors to ensure that nobody was plucked from their beds in the night and taken away from Midgard, or otherwise known as Earth. Of course, thanks to the awesome work from Pedder in the game files, but within this festival, it looks like we're going to be completing quests and activities based around honouring the dead and providing significant tribute to Odin to personally thank him for caring for the souls of their ancestors and recently loved lost ones. And interestingly, the Wild Hunt tale actually evolved into what we know now as Santa riding across the skies with his reindeer, which is pretty cool. Now, the Wild Hunt has actually already been named in the game files by Ubisoft, and this is actually around a place called Wishman's Wood, which is located in southern Hampshire, and it is actually a real-life wood in Devon, and noted in the database in the Valhalla base game, it said that its name has actually been derived from an ancient forest. The Hellhounds of the Wild Hunt are also known as Wished Hounds, so with all of these things considered, I reckon this festival looks pretty solid to me. And actually, when we do think about a release date, well, I also think we've got a good shot of deducing when that may be. So let's take a look at the post-launch map Ubisoft recently released, and as we can see, the River Raids update has already come out on the 7th of September. That's done and dusted, but the next title update is the image we've got here of the Longhouse and the Discovery Tour, both categorized as fall 2021 releases. Now, Ubisoft have actually recently come out and said that the Discovery Tour is going to be released on the October 19th, which is actually pictured after the title update on the roadmap, and keep it in line with their 5-week title update schedule. That would put the release of the festival on October 12th, so that also works out as 5 weeks after the River Raids and 1 week before the Discovery Tour. So that seems pretty sensible to me in terms of a release date for this festival. But what do we actually do in this festival? Well, of course, remember this info is all subject to change, but it does seem like part of this event we're going to be tasked with defending the clan from the Wild Hunt by honouring the dead and carving their names into the ceremonial longship. Eivor will also need to encourage the settlement to perform acts of skill and bravery to prove their worth to the Asgardian gods so they essentially don't get pinched. Now, we do this through quests and activities through the festival, and I know a lot of you are going to be very pleased to hear this, but it looks like the archery event is making a comeback as well as the tournament, and we're also going to be able to solve a mysterious death in Ravensthorpe, which after completing is going to earn us tokens to then spend at Norvid's shop. So it is a different festival with similar activities. They've been mixed up, and I'll explain that shortly, but essentially it is the similar format to what we've actually seen before. But let's take a look at one of the main quest Pedders found in the festival, and it looks like we're going to be crossing the Veil and entering the Netherworld, where neither living nor dead are currently in existence. We know this as someone actually says to Eivor in the game files that we'll want to keep a close eye on Braun's uncle, who keeps leaving the flaming pots all over the shop around Ravensthorpe, and after we then find him and chat to him, the mad monk says to Eivor that his herbs, which he's placed in these pots, allow us to see the invisible, and by doing so, we're going to be able to cross the veil and discover the mysteries of the Nether realm. This dialogue is then followed by an entry Pedder has also found, stating that we'll need to cross the veil and face your greatest fears, so prepare to meet your own worst enemy. Now, I'm not going to spoil who that person is or say what spirit is on the other side of this Nether veil. Needless to say, I think some of you may have already guessed who it is or who it may be, but if you would like to know, comment down below and I will actually let you know. So following that, Eivor then goes on to say, "Stand aside, spirit, I come for the rune and I do not wish to add to your grief." And this turns out to be quite intriguing actually, because after you finish that encounter and come back to the world of the living, it says that a rune of protection is written large on the Longhouse. The restless have been put to rest. Now, the reason why I find this intriguing is because, as we know, Odin is a relentless seeker of knowledge and wisdom, and he is willing to sacrifice almost anything in his pursuit of this. Runes in particular allow those who understand them to interact and influence the world around them, shaping the actual forces they symbolize. So when Odin, who actually spent a huge amount of time searching for runes, he was actually trying to uncover an extraordinary potent system of magic. So much so, Odin pierced himself with his own spear and hung himself from the branch of Yggdrasil, peering down into the well of Erd below, calling out the runes, telling them to show themselves so he could understand their secrets. While he was doing this, he actually transitioned into the Nether realm, which I believe is what we've just talked about just here. Anyway, he then succeeded and the runes showed themselves to him, and Odin learned the old rune magic. And I think this is exactly what we can see here in this quest, and I think it could potentially be tied into the Odin runes that are actually dotted around all over the game and still remain a mystery. Now, that is pure speculation from from my front. It would make sense to me, but I think we're just going to have to wait and see. Now, we also pick up another quest here where it also seems like we're going to be re-entering the Nether Realm, and it's actually called Honoring the Dead. To get started, we'll have to visit Gudmund, the shipmaster, who seems to be the one who's actually looking after this longship containing all of the offerings to the gods, and I reckon this is going to look something similar to what we've already seen in the Sigurblot Festival. And after we do arrive, it also looks like people have been actually carving the names of fallen friends and family onto the boat. And in fact, it is said in Norse tales that gifts were often left for Odin and Sleipnir in a small boat, which was then subsequently taken to the dark, ominous woods as a payment to the Wild Hunt. And I'm assuming this boat may be taken to the local Ravensthorpe woods, or perhaps even Wishman's Wood that we spoke about earlier, even though this isn't actually mentioned in the quest file or game file that Ped has found. More speculation for me, but I think that would be really cool. In any case, it seems like there's a name Eivor notices on the boat called Calf, which is unfamiliar. And as the names on the boats are all carved onto it by someone living in Ravensthorpe who planned to honour them, Eivor wants to find out who actually made the engraving of Calf's name onto the longship. And as the questline continues, and I don't want to spoil anything because I actually think this one's pretty good if these game file entries are anything to go by, but it does seem that we actually enter the Nether Realm again and replay a vision from Calf himself regarding the Great Heathen Army, which is before Eivor actually arriving on England's shore. So if I was to hazard a guess, I think it would be something similar to what we actually experienced with Ragnar Lothbrok's death, so big fingers crossed this is a banger. By the way, folks, if you've learned anything new or picked up any value from the video so far, a very swift like down below would help me out a ton, so thank you very much. Now moving on to some more activities, and it looks like we're going to be picking up another tournament to complete at Swinder, it seems, but this time it's called the Fog of War. In fact, Swinder goes on to tell Eivor that some of the people are anxious about the Wild Hunt, and I want to raise their courage through contests of skill and bravery, and we can actually do this by recreating the chaos of battle, and our warriors will fight within the Fog of War. So it looks like we're going to be picking up the same game mechanics of a tournament that we've seen in the Sigurblot Festival, but it seems this time, instead of weapons, we'll be choosing armor sets, and one of them has a limited room for rations, whereas another one will actually increase your strength but lower your defenses. So a little bit of a mix-up, but it does look like a standard arena fight for Norvid tokens for me. Maybe we jump in and out of the Nether Realm or in and out of the fog, I'm not so sure, but it's a tournament at the end of the day. Next up, and I know I said it earlier, but I'm sure you're going to be even more thrilled to hear it again, but it looks like archery is returning to the festival. And as Eivor says to Thydra, we need an archery challenge to test our skills, and I'm sure a few of you would politely disagree. But saying that, it looks like there's another change up here when it comes to this event, and it looks like we'll be scoring points for hitting the right targets and actually losing points for hitting the wrong ones. So nothing completely game changing, but I would say that it is better than having the purely copy and paste archery event that we've actually picked up in previous festivals. With that being said, archery challenges and tournaments aside, it looks like we may be picking up something new in this festival, and it's called Ake's Horse Challenge, where it seems that we're going to be racing against Ake, so something similar to us racing against the pig in the Siege of Paris, I reckon. But instead of the pig, we'll need to break the barriers with our mount, which it actually notes in the game files. So being able to run around using your horse as a bit of a weapon is very welcome, particularly as the enemies in Francia right now fight upon them and we just can't. But saying that as well, additionally, Peder has also worked his magic and found reference to Sleipnir's challenge in the game files, where we'll actually need to perform kills by rushing towards enemies with our mount, which is an even bigger tick for me. Not 100% sure if this is related to the festival update. If it arrives sooner, that's even better. I think it's something that we've all wanted for a while, just charging around in our horse, and being able to kill enemies would be fantastic. Now, after we finish the festival, it looks like we all rejoice because Odin and his hellhounds with his entourage of Asgardian gods will not be hunting anyone from Ravensthorpe, and as Eivor goes on to say, the Wild Hunt will not come for us this night, and that is, of course, unless Eivor does decide to go full Odin mode after a few beers. But actually, speaking of Odin, Peder has found more info in the game files about the third expansion, so if you would like to be the first one to know when that video drops, it may be worth clicking the notification bell so you can find your way back here with no issues. But let's move on to some rewards, and Peder tells me that these are the provisional placeholders in the game files for them at the moment regarding this festival, so it isn't 100%, but it does look likely that these are going to be rewarded for the festival, and it seems at this stage we're likely to be picking up one full Fest Scythe, a complete new armor set, as well as some full body tattoos from Norvid's shop. There's also no mention of settlement cosmetics as rewards in this one, which is very welcome in my opinion, but instead we do pick up another raven skin called the Bony Raven and some new hair and build options, which is pretty standard stuff. But I tell you what's not standard though, and that's our outstanding Discord community of over 500 members, which is a very smooth transition there. But if you do fancy a chinwag with some awesome people, do drop by and say hi. It would be great to see you in the lobby. I've popped the invite link down below. And of course, big thanks to the man of the hour, Peder, thank you, mate, for your outstanding work from all of us. Another top shift. I'm very much looking forward to what you find next. Anyway, looking forward to catching up in the next video. And as usual, coffee's on me.